Hey, before we begin this video, there are dozens of people on YouTube who are trans and who are way more versed at talking about this subject than I am. Here is a big long list of them. Please go and follow some of these people. Don't just who am I? Just here you go. Go follow them. Thank you. Let's get into it. So I debate a lot.
Hello, are you here to debate? Hello, are you here to debate? Hello, are you here to debate?
Like, a lot. And I've been asked to basically boil down my arguments into videos like these to make them a little more digestible for you all. You know, sometimes during a debate, it's a little hard to get every piece of all the information, of all the arguments I'm using into one cohesive sentence. So that's what I've done here. This is going to be the Professor Jovan series because I couldn't think of a better name. If you can think of one, maybe drop it in the comments or something. I don't, maybe. So, hello everyone. My name is Professor Jovan, and I'm going to boil down the necessary condition argument that I use when debating whether trans women and trans men are women and men. And I'm going to show you how this argument really tackles and dismantles the notion that sex equals gender, or that men and women must be males or females. If I'm looking at my teleprompter to read my script, do you guys hate that? Should I memorize these things? Never gonna happen. So to start, this is not an argument about the validity of trans identities. I want to get that very clear right up front. Because identities are internal senses of self, we really don't need any validity for them past some level of self-affirmation. Identities are internal, they're not external. So making the claim that you need to meet some sort of external qualification for something in order to meet that identity is just kind of silly. This is going to be a really important rule for how we engage as humans, especially in a field like sociology. So many people conflate internal identities with external classifications. So again, the necessary condition argument is a counter argument. It is not a claim. You can essentially boil arguments down into two types. You have justifications, which are arguments you use to support a claim that you yourself are making, and you have critiques, which are arguments you use to tackle a claim someone else is making. I dislike pizza because it's the messiest food ever. Justification. But you like spaghetti, which is objectively messier than pizza. Critique. A critique is just showing someone why their reason for their claim does not logically track. Again, necessary conditions as an argument are more of a critique that gender and sex are the same thing, or a critique of needing to be a specific sex in order to be a specific gender. For example, it is not always the case that one must be male in order to be a man. And I promise this is something we're going to get into as we deep dive into the argument. Just be patient. Now, I'd like to clarify some of the terms I'm going to use here in the beginning of the video, but there will be more clarification of other terms towards the end of the video. Primarily, I want to talk about sex and gender. So you have sex, which is typically going to refer to the biological characteristics of reproduction, typically assigned at birth. These characteristics would include chromosomes, gonads, hormones, reproductive systems, and internal and external genitalia. Then on the flip of that, you have gender, which is going to refer to the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. This would include norms, behaviors, and roles, as well as relationships with one another. Now, I like to split sex specifically into two categories, although I know some people disagree with me on this, but follow along because I find that it makes talking about sex a lot easier. Those two categories would be genotypic sex and phenotypic sex. Genotypic sex is going to mostly refer to a person's chromosomal makeup, where phenotypic sex is going to refer to a person's primary and secondary sexual characteristics. A really easy way to think about this is genotypic sex refers to something in your genes, where phenotypic sex refers to a phenotype, something you can typically see or measure. It's really important to know that when we as humans refer to someone as a man or a woman, we're almost exclusively never talking about genotypic sex. Even people who view gender and sex as sort of the same thing, they don't even do this. If I tell you to think of a woman, chromosomes is never the first thing you're gonna think of. Hell, you're probably not even going to instantly go to genitalia. What you will probably think of is some level of phenotypic trait that has become typical in whatever society or culture you are from. Now keep in mind, phenotypic sex is in no way rigid. Variables exist in everything, and they sure as hell exist in phenotypic sexual expression. It's also really important to understand that the reason why sex and gender are so tied together is a historical one. Most of the time when I debate someone, they tell me, well, I learned this in the 3rd grade, that men are adult human males. Well, yeah, we taught it like that for a long time. But again, this is historical. Also, I hate to tell you, but it's always been this way is a really bad argument. Just because something has been socially enforced for a long time doesn't mean we need to keep socially reinforcing it. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Again, the argument I hear the most in my debates about sex and gender is pretty simple. In order to be man, you must be male. And in order to be a woman, you must be female. And honestly, if I went out and polled like a random swath of people, they would probably mostly all tell me that same thing. 9 out of 10 people are probably gonna answer the exact same way. All right, I think to most people, this just seems like the intuitive answer. We've been raised in a pretty cis-centric society, and due to rigid gender social contracts, we've tied sex and gender together pretty tightly. But, big but, this argument fails in a lot of aspects. When we're claiming someone is not a man or a woman, we're making category distinctions. Now, humans love to categorize. It's just how our brains naturally work. It's how they make sense of the entirety of the world around us. In fact, your brain is categorizing things right now, and you don't even realize it. We call this the process of schema-based categorization. Think of schemas almost like templates. They help your brain interpret and categorize new information based on past experiences. All of this is a part of implicit cognition, which easily just means that your brain is doing this subconsciously. You don't have to think about it. Think about it. When you want to eat soup, your brain knows to grab a spoon, unless you're a monster. Schemas help your brain recognize the things around you. It's how you even know what soup is to begin with. It's how you know to eat soup with a spoon. It's how you know that a spoon is a utensil, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, almost everything in our material world can be categorized. My cell phone, for instance. It can be categorized as a phone or a personal computer, handheld electronic, a time waster, and like so many other things. Categories have a lot of overlap a lot of the time. Have you ever made a Venn diagram? You're basically finding commonality between 2 different categories. Now, sex and gender are both categories as well. Sex is used to categorize reproduction, like we talked about earlier, and gender is going to be used to categorize social and cultural differences between the sexes. So when I have someone come into a debate and they tell me trans women cannot be women, well, they are making a category distinction. They're saying that woman is indeed a category, and not only that, but there are some people who cannot fit into said category. Now, this is true. Categories can be exclusionary, and a lot of times they need to be for clarification purposes. There's a reason why we know cats aren't dogs. There's a reason why when I want to eat a blueberry, I don't eat a nuclear bomb. And I actually agree that there are some people who are not women. However, comma, asterisk, ellipses, the way we distinguish these categories is vastly different. So let's say someone comes up to you and they engage with you in this argument. Trans women are not women. Well, great. You know this is most likely going to be an exclusionary category argument, even if the person you're arguing with doesn't realize that this is the argument they're making. This is so easy to dismantle. Now, first and foremost, I like to make sure the person I'm arguing with knows that this is what they're doing. Are you saying that woman is an exclusionary category? Now, if the answer is no, then great, argument over. If the category is not exclusionary, they can't tell you who and who can't be in the category. But if the answer is yes, well, then we need to talk about necessary conditions. Now, to me, the concept of necessary conditions is so on its face simple that I feel like I shouldn't have to explain it, but I will in case you're new here or you just like the sound of my voice.
How you doing?
We can break this down easily by just the phrasing. Necessary condition. A condition or attribute that is required to fit into a certain category. Imagine I have a road, and I say in order to drive on this road, it is required that you drive a red car. Well, I've just set a necessary condition upon this road. Now, necessary conditions are really different from sufficient conditions. Sufficient conditions are going to tell you that this isn't a trait you need to possess in order to fit into the category, but if you do possess this trait, you may fit into the category. Think of it as one of them being more prescriptive and one being a bit more descriptive. Now, people get sufficient and necessary conditions mixed up all of the time. This is okay for the purpose of our arguments. You just need to make sure that they are understanding that they are making a necessary condition argument, not a sufficient condition argument. Necessary is required, sufficient is not. To drive on the road, it is required that you have a red car, not if you have a red car, you may drive on this road. You may also drive on this road if you have a blue car or a green car or a yellow car. It's really simple, right? Not to transphobes. Now here's where we get into how I tackle the concept of biological determinism. Oh man, biological determinism is basically the idea that most transphobes follow, even if they're not conscious that it's the idea they follow. Biological determinism is the basic idea that everything, including our nature, including the roles that we take up in society, are tied to some physical biological trait. They don't usually believe in social constructs, or they don't believe in socially constructed things in the way that you or I might believe in a socially constructed thing. I hear from a lot of people, well, social constructs aren't real, so therefore they're not valid. But something being intangible doesn't make it not real. So, what would they say the necessary condition to be a woman is? Well, that is very simple. They say it's being female. So, they've set the condition. All women must be female. In order to drive on this road, you must have a red car. But this leads us to a second question. What's the necessary condition to be female? You see, when your necessary condition is in of itself a category that we use all the time, with its own set of distinctions, well, now we have to dive a level deeper. Remember this when you're arguing this. People who are critical of social determinism, which in the context of our conversation today, it just means that gender categories are primarily social in nature, not biological. The people critical of this will often think you're changing the subject. You aren't. You're not moving the goalpost. You are asking them to define their terms. You're doing what we in the debate business like to call conceptual analysis. You're trying to get your opponent to clarify their concept and test their concept against real-world examples. It is necessary for a female to have XX chromosomes. Some females are intersex. They don't possess XX chromosomes. They might have XO chromosomes or XXX chromosomes. Some females have XY chromosomes. So is it really necessary? So again, this is where you have to nail them down on what is necessary to be female, which is really, really, really hard in a species where development is so varied. We have millions of different gene combinations, variances, mutations. How can you pin one biological trait to fit into the category? Now, on the flip, I believe that categorizing biological traits actually works better if we're using cluster categorization. I'm throwing a lot of information at you, so I'm hoping that I'm keeping it organized. I'm trying to read off a script, but I don't know. Just imagine categorization being split into two different types. We have strict or exclusionary categories. In order to be X, you must possess X trait. And then we have cluster categories. When it comes to cluster categories, we don't have one essential trait that locks you into membership. Instead, what gets you into the category is a bunch of different overlapping features. No one feature is required, and not all members are going to share the same features. To give a really simple example, let's start with exclusionary categories. Imagine I have a square. In order to be a square, you must have 4 sides. All sides must be equal in length, you must have 4 right angles, and you must be a closed 2-dimensional shape. If any of these traits are missing, guess what? You're not a square. 3 sides, you're a triangle. One of your sides are longer than the other. Congratulations, Mr. Rectangle. Missing a right angle or 2? Well, you, my boy, are a rhombus. This category is rigid and strict. Now, think of a game. Games are a category. There are things that are games and things that are not games. But can you think of the necessary trait you have to possess to be a game? You could say games involve winning and losing, but some games don't. A game requires a team, but some games can easily be played alone. I would know.
The gang's all here.
Notice how every proposed necessary condition for a game kind of fails. There isn't really one necessary trait that every single game possesses. Now this would be Ludwig Wittgenstein's classic example of family resemblance, which we've been calling cluster categorization. Games don't really have any necessary conditions. They have a list of common traits that we use to connect them all together. This is where cluster categories shine. They explain categories that work in practice but don't really have any hard edges. So back to the main point here. Biological differences amongst living creatures would be more aptly determined by cluster categorization, because typically you're never going to find one trait that connects all of these creatures together. Think hard. What is the necessary condition to be female? We know it's not chromosomes. We definitely know it's not the ability to give birth, because some women can't do that. Is it menstruating? Some women don't menstruate. Is it the production of a female-centric hormone like estrogen? Well, males produce estrogen as well. Every trait you try to boil down will have some singular person who breaks the condition. And remember, necessary conditions mean there can be no exceptions. One singular exception breaks the necessary. And if you break the necessary, it was never really necessary to begin with. So, if male and female cannot be exclusionary categories with a set necessary condition, then man and woman cannot be exclusionary categories that use male and female as their necessary condition. Now, I do think there is a necessary condition to be a woman or a man, and this would tie into the definition of woman and man that I use that was graciously gifted by my friend Katie, which is just that a man or a woman is an adult human whose gender identity aligns with their schema on either the male or female sex respectively. Now, do be careful. Some people will say that the necessary condition is just having a body that's ordered towards female or male, or a body oriented along the pathway that under normal circumstances would allow for X trait to exist. They're a woman as long as their body is female, or had it developed the right way, would have developed to be female. This is a bad argument. And it's entirely not how biology works. There is no order to biology. Biology doesn't make rules and then follow those rules. Biology has no intentions. We don't develop along singular biological pathways that are rigid. The human body has been changing and mutating and developing variances forever. Do not let them take you down this path. Simply state, biology has no natural order, and be very strict about this. The burden of proving a naturally ordered biology is now on them. It's not on you. And 9 out of 10 times, this argument stems from religion, so now they have to prove, like, that a God exists, which is utterly impossible. The debate is yours, my friend. Anyway, this has been an analysis of the necessary conditions argument. I hope you guys liked this. I hope that this was, like, informative. I hope that it helped you sort of understand the argument that I was doing. Here are my patrons. Thank you guys for supporting the video. I hope that this let you really understand, like, the difference between, like, biological essentialism and, like, social constructions. If you want more videos like this, let me know. If you want a video diving into the definition of woman that I use, let me know. If you want videos talking about other topics, let me know in the comments what topics you want me to handle. Thank you again for watching and for being here. I'm gonna go now edit all of this footage, so bye.